Yes, apologies for the other day when the year 13 came in, but very excited after that year 2 exam. And I don't know if you heard them talking, but the case study was on Iceland and Iceland's economy. And we were so fortunate a few weeks ago that we had Lucy Armstrong, CEO of the Alchemist Group. And one of the things that she talked about, just by chance, and then we looked at it in a little bit more detail, was the Iceland's economy during the financial crash and what happened during the banking crisis there, and the fact that lots of bankers actually were jailed and pursued quite vigorously by the authorities in Iceland and locked up, whereas that hasn't been the case necessarily in this country. So the whole problem of moral hazard and banking and so on was discussed. So I was very pleased that that appeared on the exam. Good news. So the last paper is tomorrow. We wish you well, and I'll be putting my video up later today actually on my thoughts on what might potentially be on the third paper tomorrow, the synoptic paper. Obviously, the exam board, and just for your information as well, the exam board, they've got 3 papers in which to assess as much of the A-level specification as they can. So if you look at what's on paper 1 and look at what's on paper 2 and strike those all off on the specification, then that leaves you hopefully with what might be left to be assessed on paper 3. That's the thinking anyway. So don't worry, I'll be having a look at that later. But for now, viewers, we are going to be looking at Monopoly, perfect competition, and the comparison of Monopoly with perfect competition. So we left it at this the other day, and Philip was telling us how he'd actually revised this for his year 1 exam, not realising that this wasn't actually part of the year 1 specification, and not even realising that we hadn't actually covered this during lessons, Philip. Remarkable.
Just keen.
Just super keen.
Yeah.
Super keen, Phil. Right. Okay. So can you please, I think you should have the bare bones of this diagram down already. But what I'd like you to do, please, is just beneath that, I want you to put the next set of axes here where we're going to talk about and think about revenue implications once we consider profit. Remember, profit is not the same as revenue. Coulson, is it? Profit the same as revenue? No.
Do that be directly underneath each other?
Preferably, yes. Well, actually, yes, they do, because we're going to take this point down through here, like so. And diagrams in pencil always is a good way to proceed with diagrams in case we make mistakes. Then we have to rub things out, and we don't want them in pen. It makes such a mess of our exercise books. Such a mess. Okay, so we've already looked at perfect competition, and we've already established that the profit maximising output rule, not the profit maximising, it's not called the profit maximising price rule, it's the profit maximising output rule, is profits are maximised where MC equals MR. So that is MC equal to MR, so we take that to our x-axis. So that's Q mon, if you will, Q mon, M-O-N, short there for monopoly. Is that okay, Nicole?
Yeah.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
For the viewers, Nicole?
Yeah.
Yes, excellent. Now, the price is therefore, Nathan?
P1.
P-mon. And where am I going to locate P-mon?
Just horizontal from MC, MR.
Just horizontal for MCMR, just, you'd say right about there?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that is not the price for the monopolist. However, it is worth, before you start complaining, Radhika, it is worth actually highlighting that point because we need to know about that for something else. So, whilst I've led you down the wrong pathway there is a purpose to that. Yes?
Is it on the...
Oh, right, calm down, Philip. Just because you're on camera, you start to show off here. Right. So, this is Q1. The profit max. This is why I'm stressing the point here, right? Is the profit maximising output rule, not the profit maximising price rule. So MC equals MR does not always deliver the price and the output. In perfect competition it does. It just so happens. But not. Yes.
Would it be higher up, so maybe MCAR?
MCAR, well that wouldn't then be at that output, would it? Because there's MCAR there. Nobody? Oh, Philip.
You just take it straight up to on the demand curve.
You just take it straight up to the demand curve. As much as it pains me to say this, yes, Philip, you're absolutely right there. Remember, demand shows what a person is. What's the key? The person is?
Willing to pay.
Oh yes, very good, yes. What the person is willing to pay. The demand curve shows your willingness to pay. So, in the very simple case of microeconomics, this is, well, I'm willing to pay P1 for Q1. So what am I willing to pay for Q1? I've got to go up to my AR curve, which, as you know from your studies of perfect competition, is also the demand curve. So we're going straight up, like so, and across. So that's P1. Now, Sigai, if that is not the price, what is it? So that's the what of producing QMON. That's the price of QMON, and that's the what of producing QMON. And you can simply read it off one of the labels.
One of the labels in that diagram.
One of the labels on this diagram, yes. And I'll give you a little clue. If you're going to be making a profit, which we've talked about the monopolists making abnormal profits.
Oh, is it marginal revenue? Or
Is
is it marginal cost?
it is, well, it's both, isn't it? But for the purposes of what we're talking about here, to illustrate a differential between cost and revenue, price being your revenue, then this point here, that is the marginal cost of producing QMON, because it lies in the marginal cost curve. And if you think about it, a monopolist earns lots of profit. How do they do it? Because they're making a big markup on the price that they charge and the cost of production. So that, we can say, is the MC MON, the marginal cost of the monopolist. Okay? Now, have I got sufficient information there, Max, in the same way that we did for perfect competition, to illustrate whether or not the monopolist is making normal profit, abnormal profit, subnormal profit?
No.
You say no? Okay, I agree, so what else do we need?
We need the average.
Okay, and it's on this diagram. We need the
average total cost.
We need the average total cost curve. Correct. Now, here then lies our next problem. Where, questioning, where do we locate the average total cost curve? That's the next point. And that's the reason that I've drawn this diagram again to the side here as a little aside to help you. I'll just put one more label on here, just marginal cost of supply. So you ought to be able to work out from this diagram where the ATC should go on that diagram? Any takers for that? Nobody? Aaron?
Should the minimum point be at the same, at the equilibrium of MR and MC? Where MC equals MR?
Well, not where MC equals MR. No.
MC equals AR?
Remember, marginal cost is supply, average revenue is demand. The minimum point on the ATC curve here is at the point at which supply meets demand. So we then you think, okay, so that's where supply equals demand. You then hold that in your head and then go across to this diagram and you say, okay, where does supply equal demand on this diagram? And Radhika, where does supply equal demand here?
Is it where MC crosses over like AR?
It's where MC crosses AR, which is there. Right there. And so that is the appropriate point at which to locate the minimum point of the ATC curve. Do you see that, Rebecca?
Yes.
Yes.
And so we then we add on the ATC curve. Now, for the purposes of your diagram, okay, I would draw this, draw it reasonably sort of steep like that. Nice U-shape, law of diminishing returns, nice U-shaped curve. This one's a bit flatter than that. Draw this one a bit steeper. More like a V than a U, almost. And that was on the year 2 paper. Talks about the Icelandic economy, U-shaped recovery, W-shaped recovery, or V-shaped recovery. Interesting. Okay, now, that's where it lies, and hopefully if you've drawn it as well as I have, that's the minimum point of ATC. Okay, now, we now have sufficient information here to tell whether or not the monopolist is making subnormal, abnormal, or normal profit. So, Alex, what's the next thing we need to do here? So we know the marginal cost, we know the revenue or the price. So now we need to establish the total cost, and where will we get that from? Where will we derive that from?
I'm not sure.
Well, we're at output Q1, Alex.
Oh, it's,
So what's the cost of producing, what's the average total cost of Q1?
so you draw a line across from the ATC curve.
Exactly. So we're going up from the profit maximising output. There's where it hits ATC, and then we're taking that across. So that is the cost for the monopolist. Which means that this hashed area here, that is all going to be, Robert?
Apple profit.
And why? So correct, but why? Tell me why?
Because if it was just normal profit, the price and the cost would be equal to that.
Okay, right, so that's why it's always useful, Robert, to have this diagram as a little aside. So when your costs, your revenues, remember we talked about this the other day, that the normal profit is built into that average total cost curve. So this one's normal, where the price and the cost are the same. Well, this one, there's your price, there's your cost. Price is clearly greater than cost, hence that is all, for the monopolist, that is all abnormal profit. Or sometimes, right, so there are three terms, depends what book you read. Perhaps you can read the economics textbook coming out shortly. Abnormal profit is one term. Supernormal profits is another term that appears from time to time. And then other textbooks, although less often, you'll hear the phrase, or you'll read the phrase, monopoly rent. So either of those are interchangeable terms to describe the profit made by the monopolist. Now, the difference here is, of course, between monopoly and perfect competition, that the monopolist, because they have got very large what? Nicole, what's the monopolist got? Very large.
Profits.
Okay, very large profits, and what else? No, they've got very large profits and market share would be one of these things. They've also got very large, what else, Daniel? Yes.
Influence over market price?
Okay, they're price makers, but they've also got very large, Max, budgets for advertising. They've got the rights to maybe, they've got the rights to operate on a train line for a certain number of years, for 10, 15 years, so they've got a license to do so. Now, what do you call those things for an outsider? Even so, I would see those profits and think, I fancy a bit of those monopoly profits.
Buyers then.
Right, so there are very significant barriers to entry here. And because of that, the monopolist is able to make those abnormal profits in the long run. Whereas what we discovered the other day was that the perfectly competitive firm can make them in the short run. But in the long run, other firms come in because there are no barriers. But in this case, all of these, abnormal, supernormal, monopoly rent, these can all be made in the long run. So for the monopolist, this is a long run equilibrium. This is a sustainable type of thing, from their point of view. Now, we established the other day, just to remind you, that this is allocatively efficient because price equals marginal cost, and it's also productively efficient because price equals min ATC. You remember that from the other day. But every time you get one of these essays, I say, let's hope this comes as an essay because it's a great topic to do in the exam for you next year, June 2019. Every one of these, you always then, once you've considered output, price, cost, revenue, profit, well, profit will come on to revenue shortly, you then also have to think, right, how efficient is it? So, Roshan, what would you say that for this one in terms of, is it allocatively efficient?
The price P1
Yes.
doesn't actually intersect the MC curve, so...
Indeed, we could reference the point that Radhika was complaining about there just 5 moments ago. We could reference that point where we have MC monopoly, so that's the marginal cost, that's the price. So what can you say about price and marginal cost?
They're not equal.
Well, you can say that the price is
Significantly larger.
price is significantly larger and greater than marginal cost. So the monopoly is therefore clearly not allocatively efficient. Okay, so for the monopoly, price is greater than MC, so that is allocative inefficiency, AI. Artificial intelligence. It's one of your favourite topics there, Aaron. Dylan, is it productively efficient?
No,
Why not?
because the price is higher than the minimum of the ATC.
Because we're not at minimum ATC. No, it's not to do... The point is here, we are to the left of min ATC, aren't we? So there's minimum, we're actually operating there. So clearly, we're not at min ATC. As you rightly said, there's price, and price is not at minimum ATC. So again, this is productively inefficient. So it's neither allocatively efficient nor productively efficient. So from a consumer's point of view, how good or bad is monopoly? So now, one would think it's bad because price is high, excuse me, and price is high, and output is low. The monopolist deliberately restricts output to charge a higher price. That's the name of the game for the monopolist. Okay, now, is therefore, Pitchfork, would you say that monopoly is necessarily a bad thing?
Well, just looking at the diagram it is, but if you consider other factors it might not be.
Oh, other factors. And what might those other factors be?
Because they make large profits, it helps your economy.
How does it? What if they just retain all the profits themselves?
Well, it wouldn't.
So it might help with, a wealthy few. But what might they use those profits to do? They might, Robert?
Research and development.
They might engage in research and development, exactly. And